Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial series on Angular 17, .NET Core Web API and Microsoft SQL Server. In this tutorial we will learn to build a very simple full stack application from scratch using Microsoft SQL Server as the database, .NET Core Web API as the backend and Angular 17 as the front end. Here is a small demo of the application. Let us open up SQL Server Management Studio and start creating our database tables. Let's connect to our local database server. In the database section, let's create our database. Let's give it the name as MyDB. Now let's start creating our table. We shall be using the create table statement. And let's name the table as to do. It will have two columns. One is an auto incrementing integer ID and another column to save the task name. Let's execute this script to create the table. The table is now created. Let's check the data using the select statement. We see that the table is empty. Let's insert a couple of records using the insert statement. The records have been inserted. Our database table is now ready to be used. Let us start creating our .NET Core Web API project. Let us open Visual Studio and choose Create New Project. Search for .NET Core Web API project. Choose appropriate folder. We don't need HTTPS configuration as of now. Let's create the project. The project is now created. Let's install some required packages for this project. First one is the SQL client to connect our code to the SQL Server database. Next is Newtons of JSON, which will help to keep the JSON serialization as the default. The packages are now installed. Let's go to launch settings. Let's keep the API development port as localhost 8000. Now let's open program.cs file. Let's first add the JSON serializers settings. Next, let's enable the CORS, also known as cross-origin resource sharing. This is basically required so that we can connect our API to the front-end project or the website. I am enabling all origins and all methods. In production, you need to enable only those origins that you trust. Now let's create a controller to write our API methods. Let's name it as to-do controller. Let's remove the routing configuration as we will define it ourselves. Let's add our SQL Server connection details in the app settings file. Now let's make use of the dependency injection to read the SQL connection string from the configuration file. In the constructor, we can initialize to read the configuration file. Let's write a method to get all task names from our to-do table. Let's define our select query. Let's define a data table variable to store the database table data. Now let's define a variable to get the connection string. Let's make use of SQL connection class and connect to our database server. Execute the SQL command, and we will fill the result into our data table using the SQL data reader. There is no need to close the reader and the connection, as it will be done automatically in the using block. Once we have the data, we can return the same as a JSON result. Let's now test this method. We can see that we are able to fetch the task names from our DB table. Now let's write a method to add the new task. This will be a post method. New task will be expected in the form data. Let's prepare our insert query and pass the new task name as the parameter. We can return a success message once inserted. Let's test the method. Let's add a new task name. We see that we have done a mistake in the parameter name. Let's correct it and try again. Let's add a new task. We see the success message. Let's verify it by calling the getTasks method again. We see that the new task is inserted. Let's complete the method to delete a given task. We will be expecting the ID of the task to be deleted. And using the delete statement, we can delete the task of given ID. Once done, let's return a success message. Now let's test the delete method. Let's first try to get the ID of the task to be deleted. The ID is 5. Let's check the delete method now. We see that the record is deleted and we can verify the same using the getTasks method. Our API project is now complete. Let us now start working on our Angular 17 project. Let us create a folder for our UI project. To create a new Angular project, we need to type ng new and name of the project. Let us go with default options. The project is now created. Let's navigate inside and open Visual Studio Code Editor. We can see the structure of our Angular project here. Let us simply run the project and check how it looks. We can see a default template. Let's delete this and add a heading for our new to-do app. Let's put it inside a div and add some margin to it. Let's add some background color for our heading and align the text to center. Let us now add code to get tasks and display it. We need to import some prerequisite modules first. HTTP client module is used to make calls to our API methods. Forms module is needed to take inputs from users and store in variable with two-way binding. Let's also import this in the import section. Let us now declare an array variable to store all the tasks. Let's add a variable to store the API URL. In the constructor, we shall inject the HTTP client. Now let's write the method to fetch all the tasks. This is a get method. Once we get the tasks, we shall update the task variable. We have a component lifecycle method called as ngOnInit, which gets executed once the component is loaded. We shall call the getTasks method in here. Now let's add the HTML to display the task names. Let's add each task name in a paragraph. We will make use of ngFor to loop through all the tasks and display the task name. Let's check if this is working. We can see the task names. Now let us add a text box and functionality to add new task. We can make use of the ng model, which does a two-way binding and updates the variable automatically once the data is entered in the text box. Let's add the variable to store the new task name. Let's add a button to call the addTask method. Let us now complete the addTask method. We will need to add a form data and append the new task name entered by the user. Now let's make use of the add task method and post the new task name to the method. Once we receive the response, we will display the message. Then we reset the new task name, and also let's refresh the task array variable by calling the getTasks method. Let's check if this works. Let's add a new task. We see that the method works and we are able to add new task. Now let's complete the delete task method. Let's add a button to delete a given task. To delete a task, we need to pass the task ID. Let's complete the delete method. Let's make a copy of add task method and make changes there. We just need to change the input and we just need to send the task ID. We need not reset the new task since we are just deleting a given task. Now let's test it. We see that we are able to delete a task. Let's add and delete a task one more time. We have now successfully completed our to-do app.